Ok, muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por la puntualidad, por estar aquí con nosotros. Está Luis Emilio de Perú. Por el lado de Perú tenemos una persona. Por el lado de Brasil, Sao Paulo, está nuestro presentador de hoy, Renato da Silva. Por el lado de Colombia, Diofanor. Y aquí en Costa Rica, Jeffrey Camacho, Cristian Carballo y un servidor. Se les agradece mucho y bueno, arrancamos a las 5 de la tarde y esta presentación está siendo grabada para uso de los demás. Adelante Renato, muy buena tarde, yo me pongo en mute y te cedo el control.
Buenas tardes a todos. Em primeiro lugar, a mim me gostaria agradecer a oportunidade de esta apresentação, agradecer a Don César por isto e pedir a todos mis desculpas porque não tenho um espanhol muito bueno, portanto que hablaré inglês uma parte da apresentação, a maior parte da apresentação, pero intentará hablar despacio para que los puedan entenderme, ¿vale? Entonces que este asunto temos hoje 50 slides de PowerPoint e o treinamento que hizo para fazer minha certificação de PSP, tomei contato com esta expressão muerte por PowerPoint, que é quando temos muitíssimos slides, um depois do outro. Bueno, que vou tentar hacerlo mais rápido la sequência de slides, porque vocês já conhecem o assunto. Então, que cambiaré agora para o inglês. There are two expressions that I got in touch when in this training that I want to say to you. First, comfort kills. We need to be always in look for new things, new information. And I am sure that your study in PSP is actually because of that. And that's the same as stay hungry, another expression Americans use a lot. During the presentation, you will see these two red eyes. This indicates questions, information that I personally think it's very important for the PSP test itself. There are some basic concepts I would like to highlight to you. First, in English, we have safety and security. Both are translated to seguridad in Spanish. But there are two very different things that we must remember all the times. Safety is about persons, people. So personal safety, not to hurt someone. And security is about assets, buildings, computers. Sometimes both are enemies. Most of the time, safe and convenient are enemies. So when we put barriers in your companies, in our houses, it's inconvenient. I must identify myself, but it's for the safety, for the security sometimes. One very important concept is detection, recognition, and identification. Detection is to detect something, but not to identify. So I detect an intruder in my company. I do not know yet who is he or she, but I detected him. Recognition is when I can recognize someone who I knew before. So if I had some information, a photo about someone, and then I found an image of that same person, that's recognition. Identification, it is when the image, the information, is enough to identify someone I don't knew previously. So this is the difference between recognition and identification. It is very important to know that adversaries have different levels of motivation, of funding, of money, and of sophistication. Every countermeasure, every security measure we apply will have some cost, not only about money, but some costs. And the adversaries we want to fight will have their funding, their motivation, and their motives. Sorry. So the structural security measures that we will see include building and facility physical structure. This is walls, roofs, and floors. Physical barriers, like fences, locking systems, and lighting. It's very important because we usually, in our business, we always remember about electronic measures, electronic barriers, electronic locks. But as we will see in the CPTED information, it is very important that the basics are not the electronic systems, but the actual barriers and concepts that we will see. Barriers can be natural, or man-made. Natural, like let's think a hill, a river, that are natural barriers. Man-made, like walls, like roads. These are the types of barriers that we will see. I will not get into too much detail of every kind of barrier because you have the material for that. But I just wrote a little the key points for you to see afterwards when you study. Sorry, there's something weird with the control here. When we think about security, we must think about the balanced design principle, which means it's not enough to have a strong wall. I may have a very strong wall, but I must think about the weaker link. In this photo, the weaker link was this door. So you can see the intruder came through the door, and every other measure, like the lock, was useless. So it's very important to think about the balanced design principle when I study security measures. One material that's very important for security is the glazing or glass. It's very important to know all the glass types for the PSP exam. So the glass types are annealed or plate glass, like this one, which breaks into large shards. It's very unsafe because when it breaks, it can hurt someone. Tempered glass, which is treated by temperature, it breaks into small pieces, and it's used in car windshields. There's the wired glass, which has steel wires inside the glass. Very good for security. The laminated glass, which is a sandwich. Sorry. Okay, there is laminated glass, which is 2 slides of glass with plastic sheet inside, and there's bullet or burglar resistance glass, which is the strongest. So it's very important to remember those types of glass for the PSP exam. Doors are very usually the weak link in access control. The types of doors are those that are listed here. So for access control, it's important to remember the standard industrial doors, the turnstiles, which may be half height or full height, and there are some characteristics of the doors related to fire conditions, fire fighting conditions. If a door is only for exit, it should have no handles on the outside, like in this photo here. In the inside, we have a panic bar, which is mandatory for fire reasons, firefighting reasons. But in the outside, there is no handle. There's no lock. This is a very efficient method of avoiding this door to be used by an intruder. The attacks to doors can be by vehicle ramming. The intruder gets a vehicle, probably steals the vehicle, and then runs with the vehicle to the door. Special shotgun rounds, as used by police forces to open doors. Hydraulic spreaders, like used by firefighting employees. The book says, the PSP book, reference book, says something interesting about fire exit panic bars. It is possible to apply a delay when the panic bars handles or panic buttons are activated, so the doors don't open immediately. But this delay is something like 15 seconds or so, are enough to an alarm to be signaled in the security room. So the security personnel can check the CCTV, the surveillance video, to see what's happening. But not some legislation may not allow for it. Next, in the list of measures, physical measures we have, there's the perimeter. In the perimeter, we have fences, gates, and turnstiles. Again, the fencing can be chain link fencing, which is very common. In the book, in the PS book, you will have the reference for how much weight it's necessary to break the AWG wire in the chain link. That's important to know. They may ask that in the exam. Gates, it's for entering with cars in the facility. It is interesting to keep the minimum number of gates for efficient operation. We will see more about that in the CPTED section. Must have locks, and it is possible to apply the same chain link mesh of the fencing in the gates. It's an interesting idea. Two types of turnstiles, waist level or full height. Both have their different users. And there's decorative fencing. Fencing that's not necessarily for security purpose, but may incorporate security features. There are other types of gates, like cable systems, expanded metal fabric, which is very strong, welded wire fabric, wooden fence, which has little security value, and electrified fence. It's very important to have proper signage in the electrified fence, saying, this is an electrified fence, be careful, with both text and in graphics. On the top of the fence, there are some materials that must be used, like barbed wire or razor wire. These are also used in temporary barriers, especially by the military forces, called concertina coils. For other types of blocking barriers, we have passive or operated. That's a very important distinction, a very important concept. So passive barriers are always operating. They are installed and are there. Operator or active barriers are activated manually by someone, by some security personnel. So passive barriers are bollards like this, engineered planters, which are planters. I will plant some bushes here, but they are reinforced. So if a car tries to ram through it, it will stop the car or at least cause a lot of damage in the car. Jersey barriers like this one, which are usually filled with concrete, very strong, but hard to move. These are sphere bollards, so the same as this is also a passive blocking barrier. One may use heavy objects and trees, water obstacles like a water fountain, walls and fences. All those are passive barriers. It is very important to check if there are some aesthetical constraints. For instance, this kind of bollards are nice, are pleasant to look. It's good for office space, but may not be good enough for a military place, a military setting. So the barriers can be active. Examples of active barriers, we have retractable bollards like these ones, those here, which may be drawn into ground and then a car may pass here. Rising wedge barrier systems like this, usually hydraulic by nature. Rotating wedging barrier systems, drop and crash beams and crash gates like this. This is an example of a truck trying to drive through a crash beam, a crash gate. and those are all barriers that are activated, so active barriers. For bollards, there are several levels of rating of how strong the bollard is. So it's K4, K8, or K12, which is the same as M30, M40, and M50. This is the speed in miles per hour that the bollard is capable of stop a vehicle of given dimensions. So it's useful to remember that there are these ratings. Wedge barriers can be rising or rotating. We saw some examples. And some are temporary. One can move the wedge barrier with a truck. Planters are good because of the aesthetic phase factor. You have a plant there, a bush, so they can be used to create a nice environment. Jersey barriers, is important to say that they must be embedded or anchored in the ground firmly to avoid a truck to tow it away. And symbolic and natural barriers we will see in the CPTED section. The next section is about containers and vaults. So the first type of container is safes. Safes are components to store a certain type of thing, a certain type of asset. It's important that safe, a safe is usually created to protect some kind of asset, and that protection may be counter security, may diminish the security value of the safe. So we have this underwriters laboratories in the US that they have classification for safes. We will see some classifications. Those are very important because it's a good information for the PSP exam. For fire-resistant safes for paper records, the safes are rated by temperature, like 350 Fahrenheit, and time, 4 hours. So 354 is the safe that's capable to hold for 4 hours at 350 Fahrenheit. This is the temperature that paper burns. There's also 352, which is 2 hours, or 351, that withstands 1 hour of this temperature. There is no 353. There is no such thing. For insulated record containers, for electronic media like floppy disks and other magnetic recordings, the temperature is lower. So we have 150 and 125. These are the equivalents in Celsius. For filling devices, we have combinations of 350, 150, and 125, but only for 1.5 hours. These filling devices won't withstand 2 or 3 or 4 hours. So the ratings are lesser than those ones. For file drawers, we have 350, 150, and 125. All of them with 1 hour. Those are the classification for the vaults. These are the testing ratings. So these are the tests that are submitted, are applied to the safes to check if they are strong enough. So there's two resistant. The TL prefix means the UL crew, the UL people, they tried for 15 minutes with several power tools to open the safe, and the safe resisted. For how much time? For 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, applying all 6 sides of the safe. So TL15, someone used a power tool to tried to open the safe, and it resisted for 15 minutes. 30 minutes, trying the 6 sides. There is also the TRTL, which beyond the tool, also a torch, a blowtorch, and TXTL, which applies torch, explosive, and tools to try to open the torch. So these are the strongest tools, safes. There's also safes to protect valuables, burglary, fire, and GSA approved for US government documents. Those safes are not tested. Vaults are like safes, but while vaults are big, vaults are like rooms, very reinforced. In the reference material, you have lots of information about vaults and penetration techniques and how to protect the vault. So I suggest that you read more detail there. Mechanical locks. Locks are the most common type of security device that there is. So it's very important to know keys and locks, especially for the PSP exam. Warded lock, like this one, is an old ancient lock that has no security value. It's only used in very old houses. Lever lock has a very nice animation in Wikipedia showing how it works. I suggest that you see that. It had several levers, and the lock will, and the key will slide those levers so the latch can open. Wave tumbler lock, a pin tumbler lock was invented by Linus Yale. It's a very common brand in Brazil, I suppose in Costa Rica also. The pin tumbler lock is very common. We use it in the everyday. Wafer tumbler lock is a little different because there are wafers there instead of pins that rotate along the key. And there's also dial combination locks with numbers and electronic combination locks. It's interesting to know, it's important to know the way to calculate combinations in key locks and in dial locks. This is very common questions, very possible questions for PSP exam. So this is the usual formula to calculate how many combinations a key will have and how many combinations a dial will have, a dial lock will have. Master keying is when we have individual locks for some doors and some group keys, a key that will open several locks. So a single lock will have two keys, two sets of keys, an individual key and a second collective key, a group key. There are some problems using master keys. First, accountability. Who has the group keys? It's very easy to get lost the control of who has which key. To have two keys in the two key sets in the same lock creates additional lock picking opportunities. So it's easier for an intruder, a criminal, to lock pick an individual lock. And also there's additional maintenance because the internals of the lock may break and need more maintenance than a regular one key lock. Security vulnerabilities for locks. Attack by force, like a crowbar or a very large hammer. Surreptitious attack, like lock picking, using tools like this. Impression making, when someone copies a key by using some impression in a surface. Try keys like those and jingle keys. So these are using one after the one, and sometimes one will open the lock. With very little skill, someone can try to open the lock. And there are some recommendations for lock management. Relocation of cylinders, so remove a cylinder from times from one door and move to cabinet locks. Move from one cabinet lock to another. So these are measures that a secured-minded person can use in the company to relocate cylinders of locks. Changing locks combination, this is a little hard because it must be performed by a specialist. It's opening the lock and move the pins or tumblers inside the lock. Or using interchangeable cores like this one, where I can move this core from one lock to another with little of effort. So the key combination will change for that door. Those were mechanical locks. Now we'll see a little about electrified lock mechanisms. It's fundamental to understand the differentiation between fail-safe and fail-secure locks. The difference is when there's a power loss or some fails or mechanical fail in the lock, what will happen? Systems that provide safety, meaning systems that will keep persons safe, are called fail-safe. So this kind of lock, with electromagnetic lock, when there's no power, the door will open. So it's safer for the aspect of the persons. That's a fail-safe lock. Locks like this one, when the electricity is cut, when there's no power, the door will remain locked. It's a fail-secure lock. So there's these two types of locks. It's very important to know the difference. Fire code mandates that exit is always allowed, with no special prior knowledge. So if I'm in an industry, in an office space, and there's a fire alarm, I must be able to exit to the street without any problem, any locks barring me. Because of that, there are panic buttons, panic barriers that must work in the case of a fire. Primary types of electrified locking mechanisms are electric deadbolt, like this one, where the bolt goes inside the lock when activated. Electric latch, so this part of the lock will recede when activated. And electric slide, like this one. So this lip will slide. This is also a fail-secure example. When designing security locking systems, and here the concept is always to think about what is the proper security locking systems, it is interesting to answer this questionnaire. I won't go to all the questions, but I suggest that you read them in the reference material, because it's a very interesting approach, not only for security locking systems, but for other security systems, especially the budget thing. When designing a secure locking system, it's important to consider this. Is there a need for different concurrent levels of security for locked spaces? So do I need some persons to have some access with the keys in order to have others? If so, I must plan that carefully, because it's very easy to copy a key. What's the likelihood of change in those levels? It's very common when I have turning of people. What's the probability of some users requesting common access in some areas and exclusive access in others? Remember, access devices like keys may be lost, compromised, or damaged. What will be done in those scenarios? We will have extra copies of the keys. So all of this should be planned. The main checklist to create a budget and to plan the locking system, we include the total number of locks, what categories of sectors of the system I will have, for instance, general areas, classrooms, and the computer room, which will need a better lock, things like that. What are my security objectives? Size and turnover of population. How other subsystems will have video surveillance, alarms. All of those must be taken in consideration. What's the criticality of the access exposure? I'm sure you guys studied the criticality of assets, the classification for risks before. So it's very important to think about the criticality of what asset is inside, is protected by the lock. All policies should be written. especially for large and multi-sector operations. So do not trust on knowledge that is not written, because there's turnover of the security persons, the security personnel. It's very important the policy to be written so new employees can be trained properly. It's important to assign specific responsibilities, who is responsible for the locks, and measure compliance of the employees. Are the employees treating the locking system, the security system overall, with the proper procedures? So now we will talk about a little about lighting. It's a very important topic in the PSP exam. One I was not familiar with, and I gave special attention to this. So proper lighting can be a deterrent to criminal activity. So not too motivated criminal will avoid to go into a very illuminated area. We'll see more about that in the CPTED section. So it's very important to have proper lighting. What are the positive impacts of lighting? Supporting electronic surveillance systems, CCTV, cameras. So it's very important to have proper lighting. To enhance ability for people to observe a scene, so regular, casual observation of the scene. Assist security response operations. If the security team is searching for someone in a dark area, it will be hard to find the intruder. In a lighted, well-lighted area, it will be easier. Distinguish public from private space. So my company, the outside of the parking lot, for instance, may be darker because it's the street. But inside the parking lot, I must have proper lighting to indicate this is private space. This is my parking lot. And reduce possible liability. In the United States especially, if someone, let's say, trips and falls in the floor because of poor lighting, it may be a lawsuit. It's not common in Brazil, but in the United States it's very common. Lighting has some negative impacts. First, costs. Most of lighting expenses are by choice, elective. The company will choose to invest in lighting. There are costs of equipment, installation, and maintenance. It's a negative impact. There's light pollution and light trespass. Light pollution is when I have too much light in a given space. Light trespass is when my lighting is going through my neighbor. It shouldn't go, but it's going. I may have fixtures with our light spots with poor aesthetics, ugly lights, or with bad architectural design. And lighting may call attention to a low profile site. I may have a venue, a place that's low profile, that will not call attention of possible criminals. And by lighting, the criminals will see what's inside and may call attention. So it's a negative impact. Types of lighting equipment are the street light, like this one, searchlights, floodlights, Fresnel lights, and hide mask lighting. It's important to know the characteristics of the light supplied by each kind of lighting equipment, both for use and also for the PSP exam. Types of lamps. This has changed since my PSP exam. It's important to know at least what's the characteristics of each kind of lamp. So incandescent is the old light bulb. It's forbidden to buy in Brazil, this kind of bulbs. It's hot, it's not efficient, and it burns very fast. It has a short lifespan. Halogen and quartz halogen is more efficient. We have fluorescent lights, which is cold, but it has power levels or light output, so it's not used for outside, only inside. Mercury vapor is very used, but it has a slow start. It takes some seconds or minutes to get to its full light potential. It has poor color rendition. This is very bad for security surveillance, because when I see the CCTV video of a scene, I may say the car was green and the car was actually brown. So color rendition is this quality of the light, but it has long lifespan, so it may be used if I do not need CCTV surveillance. Methyl halide is very used in stations. It has a very good color rendition, almost like daylight, but expensive. High pressure sodium is a very good, very efficient light bulb lamp. It has long lifespan, but poor color rendition, so not good for surveillance. It is good, but to see details at long distance in fog conditions. So if you have fog conditions, like near the ocean, it may be a good lamp to use. Low pressure sodium is more efficient, but expensive, very expensive. So, and has a poor color rendition. So no good for CCTV also. LED with light emitting diode is the lower cost and highly effective. It's used very low power, but it may emit too much light. We will see that in about a bit. Induction lamps have long time span and are used mostly indoors and parking structures. They are not very frequent to be used, induction lamps. This is very important. What's the security goals of lighting? To create a psychological deterrent. So an intruder seeing illuminated companies, illuminated house, will think twice to invade it if the neighbor is all dark. To enable detection, with lightning, I will detect someone who is passing. It does not need to be lightning over the subject. I may be able to detect movement by contrast. I illuminate a wall, and when the person, the criminal, walks or runs in front of the wall, I can detect the movement, but not identify the person. And to enhance the capabilities of surveillance systems. That's the third goal of lighting. It's very important to remember those three. Problems with ineffective lighting, like this example and this example. When I have severe contrasts between light and shadow, too much contrast, it will be impossible to see it here. This is called dark spots. It's a very good place to hiding. A person standing here wouldn't be seen. Bad lighting will also illuminate the security officers instead of the attackers. That's a bad idea. When I have excessive lighting, such as a poorly used LED system, I will have glare. Glare is when I have too much light in one spot and not even lightning through the scene. So in this example, I have a glare here in this vehicle. I cannot see who is inside the vehicle, nor see the license plate. It's a very poor lighting condition here. There's also other problems with excessive lighting, like light spillage, which is excessive light outside the scene I want to illuminate. and light pollution with a specific kind of spillage. It's important to know the characteristics of light because they are used to establish the proper conditions for secured scenarios. The quantity or flow of light is measured in lumens. So a 100 watts light bulb will have about 1700 lumens. This is a very important measure. So this is quantity of light that the bulb emits, the lamp emits. The light level or intensity or luminance is how much of that light is falling in a given space, a given area. In the international system SI, we use lux, which is lumens by square meter. The Americans use foot candles, FC. Foot candle is the light that one candle will emit a foot of distance, a foot away. It's wholly 1076 lux. This equation is very important for the PSP exam. It's important also to know this variation here, not the details, but have some idea. Reflectance is the light that a given substance will reflect. So, asphalt, if it receives 100 lumens, it will reflect 5 lumens. This is what this number says. So asphalt has very little reflectance. It will absorb light, and snow is very reflective, has high reflectance. Color temperature, I will show an image afterwards, is if the light is perceived as warm or cool. It's measured in Kelvin. So it's common for high and low pressure sodium lamps to be in this range, 2000 Kelvin or 175 Kelvin. A proper color rendition, which is measured by the color rendition index, says how well the color is represented by that light. And the range is from 0 to 100. 70 to 80 is good, over 80 excellent, 100 and 100 is daylight. So that's why sodium and mercury vapor lamps are bad for severe applications, because their CRI is below 80. The components of the lighting systems are the lamp or light bulb, the luminaire or fixture, which is the full set, the mounting hardware, and the electric power. We have all these 4 components for the lighting system. There's an important concept which is the illumination uniformity. Is how well uniform is the light in a given environment. It's the ratio between the average light level and the minimum light level in the environment. Usually the first will be larger, the average will be larger. So for working environment, it's usual to have 1 to 0.7. This means that the minimum light level in any place, in any spot of the work environment, is 70% of the medium. So it's very even. In a pedestrian walkway, I will have 4 to 1. This means that in the darker places, I will have 1/4, 25% of the average light. So I will have some variation here. It's not uniform. In the roadway, I will have a very large difference. to fight illumination uniformity, one must invest. It has a cost. So one must see what's acceptable and invest to achieve that. Economic considerations about the lighting. There are some exceptions, but most of the time the lighting costs are elective. The company must decide to invest. So there are capital items, things that must be bought. It amounts to 8% of the cost. Maintenance, regular maintenance, 4% of the cost. And the large cost is about energy. So it's very important to use efficient energy lighting systems. Maintenance of the lamps is very important and includes replacement and cleaning. Replacement should be done several times a year, not only when the bulb breaks. The number of luminaires used is a function of the area to be colored, the light covered, so larger area, larger number of luminaires, light levels required, we'll see about that in a moment, the type of luminaires and the type of technology used. This is a very important point for the PSP exam. Starting on the side, some lamps, some types of lamp will take a long time to warm up, to start the first time. And after a power outage, will take a long time also. So for security reasons, it's important to check what's the better kind of lamps. The high intensity discharge lamps like metal halide lamps, usually have large restrike times. But some companies like this one have a solution where a single bulb actually has two lamps inside. So only one of them is on at a given time. This provides for instant restrike. It's an interesting solution. Sorry. It's important to know that there are 4 applications for circular lighting. Standby, which is lighting that will be used if needed, not all the time. Continuous, light that is used all the time. Movable, like light that we will use in certain events if necessary. And emergency lights. The levels of light in foot candles for each kind of function, security function, is very important to know. So for detection, to detect someone, I need half foot candle. To recognize someone in a scene, I need 1 foot candle. And for identification of an unknown person, a previously unknown person, I need 2 foot candles. These numbers are important to remember. In perimeter fencing like this, it's important to have at least 0.2 foot candles in the fencing and in the clear areas around the fencing. This setup here is very close to what's a good practice in CPTED we will see in a moment. There are several other levels of lighting necessary for several situations. I won't go through all of them, but I suggest that you study the general ballpark number of each situation. especially the security control and monitoring room, this security room. It must have 30 to 50 foot candles. For surveillance system, electronic surveillance systems, CCTV, it's important, as I said, to have a good color rendition index, above or equal 80, or there's a risk to misidentify the colors. For that, it's important to take in consideration the reflectance of materials in the scene and the directionality of reflected lighting. How will the light reflect in the scene? For some IR infrared cameras, it's important to have additional light source. Most of today's cameras, digital cameras, already have some IR LEDs here to illuminate properly the scene. These cameras will work fine even in total darkness. Generally, this is more for analogic cameras. Color cameras will require twice the light of monochrome cameras. It's important that the camera has manual or automatic white balance. So this is an example of the regular image of a camera which has strong colors, strong contrast in the image regions, and automatic white balance. This image shows a warmer temperature, and this is cooler temperature. For security purposes, this is better. Now we'll reach the second topic of my presentation, which is CPTED. This is very important because it's more about a way of thinking, a philosophy, security philosophy, than a particular technology or electronic device. It's very important to understand this philosophy. So the idea here, which was created in 1972 by Oscar Newman in the United States, was called defensive space, which is criminal opportunities are created by poor built environments. That means the environments led to crime. The first use of the term CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, was 1971 by Ray Jeffrey. The targets of CPTED are places or physical environments, behavior, and the design and use of space. What's intended use of space? It's important to know very well these concepts, because it's a puzzle that will sum with barriers, with locks, with CCTV and other access control and other technologies. So the idea of CPTED is to improve territoriality, surveillance, and access control. Not only by mechanical ways, such as the ones as we were reviewing, but also natural ways. So these bollards are example of territoriality and a little access control, but in the mechanical kind of measure. There are natural and organizational methods that we will see. This image here is about signage, to have signs, to have information written and in graphics to create awareness of security. It's very important. We'll see in a moment. Some examples of CPTED tools. To have natural territorial enforcement, to establish a sense of ownership. I am the owner of this space. Responsibility, I am responsible for this space. And accountability, things that I do, if I do something bad here, I will be held accountable for that. Those concepts are very important in this security mindset. Example of natural surveillance. I want the space to be very easy to see for everyone. So a high wooden fence, which is just fence made of wood, will block a loading dock. If I use this kind of fence, I cannot see the other side, not for inside, not for the outside. It's good for thieves because they can hide. Chain link fencing provide visibility, so thieves will think twice about invading. They cannot hide in the fence. Natural access control instead of mechanical access control, like locks and doors, which we saw. Natural access control is about using real and symbolic barriers. For instance, shrubbery, which is plants. We can use plants to create natural access control. There's the important tool of management and maintenance, like the broken window story. So if a window is broken by someone, it must be replaced as soon as possible. It's bad to leave a window broken because it will invite other crimes. And support to legitimate activity. So engage residence management and security forces in the spaces to avoid criminal activity. So it's the idea of having a culture of security. The National Crime Prevention Institute, NCPI, defines that are these two important concepts. Crime prevention knowledge is continually developing. It has breakthroughs every day, so everyone must make an effort to keep it up to date, which I believe we are doing. Crime prevention strategies must be flexible and creative. Solutions from yesterday may not be good for today. So one example is the flash mob. This is a very recent phenomenon when lots of people gather after some discussion in message boards and Facebook and do usually non-aggressive acts like dancing, like performing some kind of cultural act. But it could be used by some criminal activity. In Brazil, we have criminal activities that originate like that. How can one fight this? CPTED is one tool to fight this kind of problem, creating awareness. The reference material for the PSP exam brings a list of 22 items of conditions where crime and unsocial behavior are more likely to happen, are more probable. So it's very important to know this list. I only picked a few items here, but it has relation with the other topics we saw previously. So illumination, poorly lit pedestrian roads invite crimes. A dark street, it will invite crimes. Places where people become easily lost or disoriented. So I have signs. I must have someone to give information to avoid this kind of problem. Places where criminal activity won't attract attention or won't be punished. If I have places like that, it's very easy that crimes will happen and happen again. We will see about this. There are some crimes that are easier in areas very quiet or very busy. It depends on the type of crime. So for instance, rape happens in areas very quiet, very secluded, and very dark. So one must strike using CPTED tools to create proper lighting, to create more people, more gathering of people there to avoid this kind of crime. Signs of neglect or disorder, that's related to the broken walls theory. La ocasión hace al ladrón. Entonces, so to avoid this kind of disorder, this kind of neglect, will help to avoid antisocial behavior or crime. There's this very interesting study that's important to the PSP exam, that's by Erickson. They interviewed a lot of teenager robbers and asked, why did you choose to rob to a certain, or to invade a certain home, a certain house? First, because I have an easy escape route. That's the first concern they have. Second, because there was money there. Third, because there was barriers, lightning, armored officers, I avoided commit the crime because of this, they answered. And the last, the thing that has the little importance is cameras and armored officers. So it's more important to avoid easy escape routes, to have barriers, lightning, armored officers, police patrols, the visibility of security, than to have a camera without anyone there or unarmed officers. That has little deterrence to criminals. For victimization, which means several crimes repeated in the same area or for the same targets, there's a pattern of target selection. Corner properties, corner houses, então houses that are in the corner of the block. It's easy to know there is no one home, so are easier to have repeated victimization this type of place. Ground floor apartments are easy for burglars. And gas stations and convenience stores. This is an example of an image of a parking lot with bad illumination, poorly lit, and there's a burnout sign here. So this will attract bad behavior, crimes here, because it's not being kept, well kept. Well, the priorities for CPTED should be the most severe criminal acts and the most frequently victimized persons or locations. I must start by those. To avoid repeat victimization, first thing, remove signs of the victimization. So if a lock was broken, change the lock immediately, or the door was broken, something like that. Remove, fix it. Improving physical security, blocking access to target, easy access to targets. So a security screening may be sufficient in some environments. Protect especially vulnerable targets, and regulate access to high-risk access or areas. The reference material has various examples of measures of doing those. It's good to see those. There's the interesting concept of capable guardian. When victims are perceived to be armed, capable of resistance, or potentially dangerous, criminals will avoid them. So this is all about perception. It's all psychology. There were some improvements in the CPTED theory by focusing in the motives of the criminals, not only the opportunities. So measures that can help him reduce crime are increasing the effort of the perpetrator. If the criminal has to have too much effort, he or she will think twice. Increasing the potential risk for the perpetrator. So create the psychology, that idea that the risk will be high for him. And reduce the perceived rewards to the potential offender. If the rewards is not as interesting as it was at the first sight, he or she may desist. So this research led to the shift of focus from offenders to focus on the environment with actions like this, signage. The CPTED 3D applies 3 dimensions: designation. What's the space limitation and borders of my space? What's the limitation of my company? So I will delimitate clearly where is my company, where is the public space. This is important, designation. Definition, what's the management and the identity of who is here, for instance. And to design, what's the functional behavior I want in my space. So it's interesting to check in the reference book. There's a table there with evaluating these 3D factors with the traditional 4Ds of security: deter, detect, delay, and deny access. One example of conflict where the space was poorly used is when a door was propped open by employees because there are frequent outages. The access control system wasn't working. So they just kept the door open with a broom, for instance. This is a poor system and poor user information, or user education. So this is the kind of conflicts where the user starts to use the space in a way that was not intended. The tools of CPTED for territoriality. So to define my space is training and awareness, creating a training awareness program. It focuses in people, in procedures. Signage, to plug signs. Surveillance, natural surveillance, this is an example. So this convenience store is very well lit, good lighting, and from the outside I can see what's happening inside. This is natural surveillance. I'm not being paid to check the security of this store, but I will check because I can see. That's the idea of CPTED. And for access control, to use natural access control. We will see more in the next slides. The idea here is, as soon as I can apply CPTED concepts to my space, the cheaper it will be. So if I can do that in the first site selection, where I will build my house or my company, the better. But the building must, in the first, permit efficient job performance, because the buildings have a job. A school is meant for students, not for security. Same is applied for every kind of building. So the first thing the building must do is permit efficient job performance. Second, it must meet the needs of the users. And at last, the third need is to protect the users from safety hazards and criminal acts. So the security is actually the third function of the building. the security practitioner must think about the two primary functions and then think about the security. This is the steps suggested to perform a good CPTED review. Which areas must be considered for a CPTED review? All entrance and exits of the site in the building, internal access points like doors, like rooms, environmental and building features used to gain access to the building. For instance, one must think that trees that are on the outside near the building may be used by someone climbing the tree to enter the building. That's an example of bad CPTED planning. And using security screening devices to check people. Again, the purpose of CPTED is deny access to an asset, a crime target, and to create the perception of the risk to offender, to the invader, by organizational methods, mechanical methods, and natural methods. These are some examples. The surveillance of CPTED, the natural surveillance, creates the perception of risks in minds of potential offenders. This office here is a very large, open, clear space. It's very hard to think about someone who will try to crawl here, to invade here, without being seen or spotted or detected. It's very easy to detect someone here. One can use mechanical methods of lighting and video, and organized methods, which is patrols, either by police or security officers. So surveillance can be done in those three ways: by procedures organized, by equipments, mechanical, and natural, simply by having a very visible space. In the territorial reinforcement, to indicate the limits of the public and the private space, those are the actions that can be done and the aspects that should be considered. What's the topography, the vegetation, the adjacent land users, what the neighbors do, what are the crime patterns in the region. There are some statistics for that. If there's police patrol in the area, if there are areas for hiding, for concealment, and what's the lightning, existing and proposed. Those are important aspects that should be taken into consideration. Again, the security levels should be considered in stages. The external perimeter, the outside of the building, but inside the perimeter, and the interior space. Those are three stages of protection. The security zones can be unrestricted, everyone can walk through them. Controlled, only people that have reason to be there. Unrestricted zones, which are zones very sensitive, with very sensitive information or assets, with strong access control measures. These are some considerations that can be used for improving visibility and security. This example here is very interesting. It's a thorn shrub. It's a plant with thorns planted right through next to the window. It will deter most not so interested invaders to climb through the window because of the thorns. So this is a good example of CPTED by improvement of territoriality. In the reference material, there are several scenarios that must be reading. I suggest that you study the scenarios because there's very good information there on how to use CPTED to protect those kind of buildings. So are those items, concepts that I think that is most interesting here. Traffic calming, for instance, is to make the delivery trucks and the small cars drive in different driveways. So it won't create traffic jams, traffic problems. In each scenario, one considers what assets must be protected, what are the probable risks and attacks, what's the design considerations, pros and cons of each security measure, and checklists for each scenario. So it's a very good material. How CPTED integrates with traditional security. CPTED can reduce costs because I will have less security officers, or they will work in other more important, more sophisticated functions. I will use CPTED to make the users to make surveillance, for instance. Reduce the scope of the video surveillance system. I will need less cameras, for instance. And I will provide natural access control using some structural barriers. So I can reduce costs of my security outset using this. CPTED can facilitate safety. Now it's not security, it's safety, because of improved evacuation routes in case of fire, for instance, and reduce the risk of incidental crimes, crimes of opportunity against employees, resident and facility users. It's very interesting. Sorry. This is at the end of the material of CPTED. There's this survey template, which I think is very interesting to check with more details in the text in the book. And it helps to create a very structured idea of how CPTED surveys should be made. But for the last, I want to give some exam tips, my personal experience for you guys. First, rest and sleep well the last few days before the exam. It's very important to rest and to have a light meal and water before the exam. Your body must be okay so you can concentrate in the exam. It's a very hard, the PSP exam is very hard, so you have to be well. Do not try to cram, to do last minute intensive study. It's not I know you guys use a tool that's called cram. It's not the same thing. I mean, do not try to overstudy in the last days. Answer the questions you are sure first, then the questions you are not so sure, and then the hardest questions. You can answer the questions in any way, in any order you like. The exam is very well structured. Never leave any questions unanswered. There is no penalty. It is a free win if you guess right, but you will lose a point if you guess nothing. So answer all questions. When studying, like you are doing now, focus in the topics you have least familiarity. I had no familiarity with lighting. In the exam, do not be overconfident if you have experience. I have lots of experience in physical access control systems. So it's easier for me to go wrong in a question that I overconfident than in one that I studied for that. Even if you think the reference material is wrong, answer thinking of the reference material. That's important. The questions are designed so only one alternative is right, is absolutely right. So if you think a question, an answer, an option is kind of right, something right, no, that's not the question to select. And at last, pay lots of attention for some keywords. like always, never, all, or none. Those keywords will sign that that option is correct or is not actually correct. Well, thank you very much for your time. I saw this material is really heavy, but it was a great pleasure for me.
Muchas gracias, Renato, muchas gracias. De verdad que sí, un gran esfuerzo y bueno, agradecerte montones por la presentación. Voy a pasar, como es de costumbre, Bill, Cristian, Luis Emilio y Julio César, que son los que nos acompañan hoy. Adelante, Bill, comentarios, sugerencias o preguntas.
No, muy amable, muchas gracias, don Renato. Realmente muy detallada en la presentación. La veía siguiendo de cerca con el libro y con el traductor en lo que no le entendía bien, pero muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Bill. Y si tienen alguna duda, no hesiten en me contactar por el WhatsApp, por el grupo. Estoy allá. Y muy amable. Gracias, Bill.
No, gracias a usted.
Adelante, Cristian.
Buenas. Bueno, no, muy interesante, muy agradecido. Nada más me nace una duda, pero creo que es simple. Cuando se menciona el tema de zonas, tipos de zonas, tipos de seguridad,
Sí.
tipos de zonas de seguridad.
Sí, ¿verdad?
Nada más era como un comentario que decía unrest, control y restraint. Pero supongo, o quería escuchar tu opinión, sí, desde luego hay zonas que pueden no tener restricción, pero sí tener algún tipo de control. Sí, ese mix, por decirlo de una forma, existe. O sea, zonas que están abiertas, pero que tienen algún tipo de control. ¿Es correcto o no es correcto?
Es muy buena cuestión. Y la verdad es que hay una diferencia entre el control y la supervisión. Una diferencia muy explícita en el material de estudio. Entonces, cuando dicen que hay las 3 clasificaciones de zonas que están en el CPTED, se refieren al acto de negar el acceso en primer lugar. Entonces, que una persona que no hay nada que estar ali, no llegará lá, ou se chegar, será, bueno, indagada, será abordada por el oficial de seguridad. Pero isso é o interessante de CPTED, da filosofia, é que qualquer pessoa, qualquer usuário que esteja ali, se sentirá incomodado com a presença de um estranho, de um possível invasor, um possível criminoso, um suspeitoso. Não sei se me fiz entender.
No, muy claro el tema de diferenciar control a supervisor, la supervisión. Sí. Muy claro, muy agradecido.
Bueno, gracias. Gracias, Cristian.
Adelante, ya viene a consultar. Yo creo que eso también va un poco reforzado en el concepto de reforzar esa concepción de propiedad, de pertenencia, de propiedad privada.
Sí, sí, verdad.
A la hora de mantener, hasta con el simple hecho de, por ejemplo, de la versión esta de la ventana rota. Lo mismo sucede cuando tenemos un campo o tal vez jardines que son más abiertos y están bien cuidados a jardines que están descuidados. Que tiene el mismo sentido. Entonces permite tener también esa sensación de control, que aunque tal vez no sea directo, no sea de un control activo, pero da a entender ya que hay algo que tiene que respetarse.
Perfectamente. Hay un ejemplo que me pareció muy interesante en el libro, que es de en los estacionamientos, parking lots, del uso mixto del espacio. Entonces, cuando uno tiene un estacionamiento muy grande y se pone como food trucks, como se pone como pequenos teatros, peças teatrales, algunas deportes como skate, esse tipo de uso apropriado do espaço empieza a criar uma cultura de segurança compartilhada. Isso me parece muito bueno.
Bien. Luis Emilio, adelante.
Primero agradecer al expositor, ha sido realmente una conferencia magistral. El detalle, la explicación de los conceptos muy clara, y bueno, la capacidad que ha tenido para resumir 2 capítulos en estas diapositivas poniendo tanta información, como decimos en Perú, tanta carne y tan poco hueso, vale muchísimo. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis Emilio. Muy amable.
Julio, terminamos contigo.
Buenas noches. Quería agradecerle por su excelente presentación, don Renato. Muchas gracias. Todas estas presentaciones nos van a ayudar muchísimo a la hora de presentar el examen, y los tips que nos has dado al final también, no solo al final, sino durante toda la presentación, que nos marca la importancia a la hora de presentar el examen PSP. Pues muy agradecido. En mi caso yo no tengo CPP todavía, entonces va a ser mi primera vez como otros compañeros, entonces todos estos tips nos dan como un alivio para ir más orientado al tema, entonces se le agradece mucho.
Muy amable, don Julio. Yo tampoco soy CPP, soy solamente PSP para mi profesión. Es más pertinente tener el PSP. Los deseo a todos mucho suceso, mucho éxito en el examen PSP, y estoy nuevamente a disposición de todos por el grupo. Muchas gracias a todos.
Renato, yo sí tengo algunas preguntas,
Sí.
si es posible. Tengo un par de preguntas. Aquí en la primera parte, como lo estoy pasando en tu presentación, hay mucho detalle del tema de lumens, de distancias, de reflectancia, de mucho detalle en toda esta parte de lighting. La pregunta es, ¿qué experiencia tuviste al hacer el examen con tanto detalle que hay aquí, que está muy bien estructurado en tu presentación? Pero, ¿cuál fue tu experiencia? ¿Nos vamos a encontrar con algo así?
Don César, es una pregunta muy buena, y la verdad es que yo he colocado, he puesto los ojitos rojos en los asuntos, los tópicos que yo creo que hay muchísima posibilidad de que sean utilizados en el examen. El examen no es para dejarlos desanimados, tristes, pero el examen es muy difícil, sumamente difícil. Y hay necesidad de saber, de conocer muchos asuntos, no con tanto detalle, con tanta precisión. ¿Cuántos lumens, cuántos foot candle tenemos en una situación X o Y? Pero es necesario conocer de modo general. El PSP, en mi comprensión, es una visión generalista de la seguridad y no especialista. Por eso que yo he ponido esos ojitos rojos, porque en mi experiencia el examen pasa por todos esses assuntos, los confesso que em meu exame, em minha experiência personal, eu he visto uma série de questões que eu não tinha a mínima noção da resposta certa, porque não tinha me aprofundado em aqueles pontos, em aquelas informações. Por isso que los digo, mais uma vez, estudiem bastante lo que não conhecem, lo que não vem em el cotidiano, en el día a día. Isso é muito importante. O exame é muito generalista.
Bien. Aquí en tus tips, que fue muy bueno recibir estos tips, me gustó muchísimo y justamente hacer ese énfasis en ese tipo de cosas. Y bueno, la verdad que vamos a prestarle atención a todo esto y más para poder entonces salir adelante con este examen. Muchas gracias nuevamente. Vamos a finalizar la grabación a partir de ya. Y listo.
Muchas gracias. Ha sido